Happy Valentine's Day to the John AG community. I hope you're spending it with the people you love, with your family, with the people who matter most to you. But while you're celebrating, the United States Treasury just sent a love letter to your bank account, and it says they want your gold. I have the transcript right here, the exact quote, from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, delivered on live television, February 8th, 2026, Fox News Sunday Morning Futures. And he just called your life savings a speculative bubble. Sound familiar? It should, because it's the exact same language they used in 1933, right before they came for the medal. Let me read you what Bessent said, word for word. The gold move thing. Things have gotten a little unruly in China. They're having to tighten margin requirements. So gold looks to me kind of like a classical, speculative blow-off. Classical, speculative, blow-off. Now let me read you what the New York Times wrote on April 6, 1933, under the headline, Hoarding of Gold. The executive order issued by the president yesterday amplifies and particularizes his earlier warnings against hoarding. And here's what Executive Order 6102 declared. The continued private hoarding of gold and silver by subjects of the United States poses a grave threat to the peace, equal justice, and well-being of the United States. Do you see the pattern? The playbook is identical. In 1933, they called it hoarding. They said it was unpatriotic. They blamed domestic citizens for threatening the economy. In 2026, they're calling it a speculative blow-off. They're saying it's unruly. They're blaming Chinese speculators for market instability. Different words. Same goal. Scare you out of metals. Get you back into dollars. Get you back into the system they control. By the end of this broadcast, I will prove to you that this isn't about market stability. This isn't about protecting investors. This isn't about safety. This is about seizure. I'm going to show you the motive. A government drowning in $38.65 trillion in debt, adding $1 trillion every 100 days. I'm going to show you the mechanism. A digital dollar infrastructure being built through the Genius Act and FDIC rulemaking that creates a surveillance corral where physical metal becomes the only escape. I'm going to show you the precedent. How Executive Order 6102 confiscated gold at $20.67 per ounce, then revalued it to $35, a 69% wealth transfer from citizens to the government. And I'm going to show you the timeline. How every piece is falling into place right now, in February 2026, exactly the way it did in February 1933. But before we dive into this crime scene, I want to wish a happy Valentine's Day to the Sound Money family, the stackers, the holders, the people who understand that love means protecting your family's future. And I need to know, do you trust the government with your financial future? Pause this video right now, go to the comments and type, trust or no way. Let's see if love is in the air for the Fed today. Comment now. Because what I'm about to show you is the most important forensic investigation I've ever conducted. And it starts with a question nobody on CNBC is asking, why is the Treasury Secretary trying to scare you out of gold while the biggest banks on Wall Street are targeting $6,000? On February 10th, 2026, Kitco News ran this headline, Treasury calls gold a bubble while banks target $6,000. Read that again. The Treasury, the government agency responsible for managing U.S. debt, is calling gold a bubble, while J.P. Morgan is targeting $6,000 per ounce, while Goldman Sachs is targeting $5,400, while Bank of America is targeting $6,000. John Finnick, founder of Finnick Consulting, exposed the contradiction in that same Kitco article. And I want you to listen very carefully to what he said. Whenever Bessent or Powell or anyone in the U.S. government speaks, you need to listen carefully. However, if the banks in the U.S. are doing the opposite, why do you think they are verbally suppressing this trade? Let me answer that question for you. Because the banks have the data, they have the models, they have the debt projections, and they know what's coming. J.P. Morgan isn't targeting $6,000 by year-end. Goldman isn't calling for $5,400 as a decade-long projection. These are targets within the next few months. As Finnick said, these are targets within the next few months, not by year-end. So why is the government saying the opposite? Why is Bessent calling gold a speculative blow-off, while Wall Street is loading up? Because they need you to sell. They can't tax what they can't track. They can't confiscate what they can't locate. They can't control what you hold in your hand. And that's why the rhetoric is escalating. By February 10th, Bessent had doubled down. He explicitly described the precious metals markets as experiencing a speculative blow-off and attributed the dramatic swings to unruly trading activities originating from China. He specifically highlighted the UBS SDSE Silver Futures Fund in China, which had been trading at a 36% premium over its net asset value before emergency suspensions were enacted. China, speculators, unruly, premium, emergency. These are not neutral words. These are weaponized words, designed to create fear, designed to delegitimize, designed to justify intervention. And if you think I'm being paranoid, let me show you the exact parallel from 1933. The playbook, 1933 rhetoric. Hoarding is a threat to peace, unpatriotic to hold gold, blame domestic hoarders, goal, scare citizens out of metals, result, Executive Order 6102/2026 rhetoric, speculative blow-off, unruly trading activity, blames Chinese speculators, goal, scare investors out of metals, result, TBD. That's why we're here. The language is different. The target is different, but the pattern is identical. Why are they trying to scare people out of metals right now? Because gold hit $5,594 per ounce on January 29th, 2026, before the crash. Silver hit an all-time high of $121.64 per ounce. The government cannot have a competing monetary asset outperforming treasuries while they're drowning in $38.6 trillion in debt. The bubble label is the first phase of the confiscation playbook. Delegitimize, then regulate, then seize. And the motive? The motive is desperation. Let me show you the numbers. The real numbers, not the sanitized versions you see on CNBC. As of February 13th, 2026, the United States national debt stands at $38,647,796,797.39, $38.6 trillion. Let me break down what that means. Per citizen, approximately $115,223 for every single American. Growth rate increases by roughly $1 trillion every 100 days. Daily growth, approximately $4.5 billion per day. Interest payments now exceed the costs of Medicare and the defense budget combined. CBO projection, national debt projected to surge to 156% of GDP. This represents an increase of roughly $27 billion in a single day, February 12th to February 13th. For context, just 4 decades ago, the national debt hovered around $907 billion. Today, it's over 42 times that figure. The government is broke. Mathematically, structurally, irreversibly broke. But wait, it gets worse. Because the consumer is broke too. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, released February 10th, 2026, U.S. credit card debt hit an all-time record of $1.28 trillion in Q4 2025. Balances rose by $44 billion in just 3 months. Total household debt reached $18.8 trillion. Average credit card interest rates hover around 20%. Nearly 60% of credit card holders carry a balance month to month. 55% of consumers maintain credit card balances just to manage essential expenses. Andrew Hauser, co-founder and co-CEO of Achieve, summarized it perfectly. This is the real-world manifestation of a K-shaped economy. There exists an affluent segment whose financial situations remain unaffected. For the rest, navigating financial challenges has become a daily reality. Translation: the rich are fine. Everyone else is drowning. The government is adding $1 trillion in debt every 100 days. The consumer is maxed out on credit cards at 20% interest just to pay for groceries. Where does the money come from? Where's the capital that keeps this system running? It comes from you, from the middle class, from the savers, from the people who still have assets the government hasn't touched yet. Your gold, your silver, your physical metal, and they are coming for it. Not because they're evil, because they're desperate. Let me explain the trap they're building. It's called financial repression, and it's how governments deal with unsustainable debt. Financial repression refers to economic and monetary policies aimed at keeping interest rates artificially low relative to inflation to reduce the real cost of government debt. How does it work? According to the Minneapolis Federal Reserve, financial repression works by requiring financial intermediaries to hold more government bonds than they would if policies didn't require it. Translation, they force you into treasuries. They force you into dollar-denominated assets. They force you into the digital financial system where they can inflate away your purchasing power. How the government benefits if everyone is forced into digital assets instead of physical metal. Captive audience. If citizens cannot hold physical gold or silver, they are forced into dollar-denominated financial products, treasuries, bank deposits, digital dollars, all of which the government can inflate away. Negative real yields. With inflation running above treasury yields, bondholders lose purchasing power every single day. That's a silent tax. The government's debt shrinks in real terms while citizens' savings evaporate. Historical precedent. During and after World War II, Europe, the US, and the UK shifted 20% of their outstanding debt to central banks' balance sheets. Japan has been explicitly controlling the yield curve since 2016. China has capped deposit rates for over 30 years. The endgame is a population trapped in digital financial products with no escape hatched from inflation, no privacy in transactions, and no way to preserve wealth outside government-controlled systems. And that brings us to the trap they're building right now. On January 23, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order titled Strengthening American Leadership in Digital Financial Technology that explicitly prohibits federal agencies from establishing, issuing, or promoting CBDCs, Central Bank Digital Currencies, in the United States or abroad. The order cited that CBDCs threaten the stability of the financial system, individual privacy, and the sovereignty of the United States. Trump also revoked Biden's 2022 Executive Order 14067, which had directed federal agencies to explore CBDC creation. So the CBDC is dead, right? The digital dollar surveillance state is canceled? No, they just renamed it. Because while the CBDC is officially banned, the government has pivoted to stablecoins as the replacement mechanism. The Genius Act, stablecoin legislation, is being implemented through agency rulemaking right now. The FDIC has issued formal rulemaking proposals. The act becomes effective January 18, 2027, or earlier, depending on when final regulations land. The Treasury Department has explicitly stated the dollar now has an internet-native payment rail, positioning stablecoins as strategic dollar infrastructure. Florida's SB 1568 specifically prohibits any CBDC from being treated as money under Florida law, but authorizes the state to issue its own payment stablecoins. The No CBDC Act, S.464, introduced February 6, 2025, by Senators Lee, Cruz, and Scott, would amend the Federal Reserve Act to limit the ability of Federal Reserve banks to issue a CBDC. Translation, they banned the name CBDC, but a government-sanctioned, regulated, traceable digital dollar by another name is being built right now. A stablecoin with full KYC/AML compliance, backed by treasuries, regulated by the FDIC, is functionally indistinguishable from a CBDC. And while they're building the digital Corral, they're tightening the noose on physical metal. The IRS's 2025 and 2026 instructions for Form 1099-B, updated February 10, 2026, specifically address precious metals reporting. Key reporting requirements. Form 8300. Any cash transaction over $10,000 requires dealer filing. 1099-B. Dealers must report sales of gold bars or rounds greater than or equal to 1 kilogram at greater than or equal to 99.5% purity, silver greater than or equal to 1,000 troy ounces at greater than or equal to 99.9% purity. Anti-structuring rule. Sales within a 24-hour period must be aggregated. The exception does not apply if the broker knows a customer is splitting sales to avoid reporting. The trajectory is clear. Every purchase, every sale, every movement of physical metal is being mapped into a digital surveillance grid. The IRS isn't just taxing metal, they're inventorying it. And this isn't just happening in the United States. The European Central Bank signaled it's on track to issue the digital euro by mid-2029. Multiple jurisdictions worldwide are implementing stricter AML/KYC frameworks for gold transactions. The digital Corral is global. But here's the critical question. If they're building a digital surveillance system to track every ounce of metal, what happens next? Let me show you the precedent. Let me show you what happened in 1933, and then I'll show you how they'll do it this time. Because in 1933, they didn't ask nicely. Executive Order 6102, issued April 5, 1933, by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Legal authority, trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, as amended by the Emergency Banking Relief Act of March 1933. What it required: all persons to deliver, on or before May 1, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve. Compensation was set at the official rate of $20.67 per troy ounce. Penalties for noncompliance: fine of up to $10,000, equivalent to approximately $230,000 in today's dollars. Up to 10 years in prison, or both. Exemptions: gold coin and certificates not exceeding $100 in aggregate, about 5 troy ounces. Coins having recognized special value to collectors of rare and unusual coins. Limited exemptions for industrial use and jewelry. What happened next? Executive Orders 6260 and 6261 provided for the seizure of gold and prosecution of hoarders. The Gold Reserve Act of 1934 gave legislative permanence to Roosevelt's orders. New Treasury regulations imposed civil penalties of confiscation of all gold and fines equal to double the value of the gold seized. And here's the kicker. Gold was then revalued from $20.67 to $35 per ounce. That's a 69% instant windfall for the government, funded by citizen wealth. They forced you to sell at $20.67. Then they revalued it to $35 the next day and pocketed the difference. The Frederick Barber Campbell case. When attorney Campbell attempted to withdraw his gold from Chase Bank, Chase refused. A federal prosecutor indicted Campbell the following day. The prosecution failed, but the authority of the federal government to seize gold was upheld, and Campbell's gold was confiscated. Now let me show you how a 21st century confiscation would work. Because it won't be men in suits knocking on doors. It will be financial, digital, and regulatory. Scenario 1. The windfall profit tax government imposes an 80% to 90% windfall or excess profit tax on all precious metals sales. Gold purchased at $2,000 and sold at $5,000 could face an 80% tax on the $3,000 gain, leaving the holder with just $600 in profit. This is confiscation without the optics. You still own your gold, but selling it is economically pointless. Scenario 2. The mandatory reporting and registration. All physical gold/silver holdings above a certain threshold, 10 ounces gold, 500 ounces silver, must be registered with a federal database. Failure to register equals felony charges under expanded AML/anti-terrorism statutes. Registration creates the inventory list for any future seizure. Scenario 3. The private sale ban. Prohibition on private person-to-person sales of precious metals without going through a licensed, KYC-compliant dealer. Effectively kills the gray market, garage sales, coin shows, and private transactions. All transactions routed through the digital surveillance grid. Scenario 4. The revaluation play, the 1934 replay. Mark Faber explained it perfectly. They could artificially depress, manipulate the price down, and then say gold is illegal to be held. We have to collect all the gold from the citizens. Say if they manipulated the price down to $1,000. They could collect it at $1,000 and then revalue to $10,000. And for my silver stackers thinking you are safe because this is about gold, think again. In 1933, they took the gold to back the currency. In 2026, they need the silver to build the missiles and the solar panels. They won't just confiscate silver. They will nationalize it as a strategic defense metal. If you think they'll let you hold the most critical industrial asset of the 21st century while they go to war, you are reading the wrong history books. And that brings me to the final question. The question that matters more than any technical analysis, any price chart, any dealer premium. If they launch a digital dollar, if they ban private gold sales, if they impose a windfall tax, what will you do? Will you comply or will you hold? Type your answer below. I want to see who the real owners are. Because the experts, the people who have been warning about this for decades, are all saying the same thing right now. Peter Schiff, January 28th, 2026, Fox Business. Gold and silver are warning about a bigger crisis that's going to hit either later this year or maybe next year. We are headed for a US dollar crisis and a sovereign debt crisis. Central banks are buying gold to back up their currencies. They're getting rid of dollars. They're getting rid of treasuries. We are headed for an economic crisis that will make the 2008 financial crisis look like a Sunday school picnic. There won't be a ceiling on gold prices since there's no floor on the dollar. The biggest difference between the crisis that we're about to have and the one we had back then is this one is all in America. Dr. Ron Paul, November 2025, Kitco News. We are totally bankrupt. The Fed's strategy is to cause chaos. The debt will be paid off with funny money. $4,000 gold is not the golden age, it's a warning sign. Governments will do anything they want to do, and they don't obey the law. We have to obey the law, but the government doesn't have to. Jim Rickards. When this happens, you're actually not going to be able to get gold. The brokers are out of stock. The mints are backordered. The government's intervening, and you're not going to be able to get it. The government won the war on cash. They're mopping up operations with digital money. J.P. Cortez, Sound Money Defense League, February 2026. Precious metals owners understand that inflation, debt, and a distorted monetary system are born of government mismanagement. Proposing a partial government takeover of the gold industry is both dangerous and unwise. The evidence is circumstantial but overwhelming. The motive, a government drowning in $38.65 trillion in debt, adding $1 trillion every 100 days, with interest payments exceeding Medicare and defense combined. The rhetoric. The U.S. Treasury Secretary has publicly labeled gold a speculative blow-off, the same delegitimization language used before the 1933 confiscation. The mechanism, a stable coin-based digital dollar infrastructure, is being built through the Genius Act, FDIC rulemaking, and Treasury policy, creating the digital corral that makes physical metal the only remaining escape from surveillance. The precedent, Executive Order 6102, was enforced under the Trading with the Enemy Act. The government didn't just confiscate gold. They revalued it upward by 69% after seizing it, transferring wealth from citizens to the state. The squeeze, margin hikes, speculative crash narratives, and the Warsh nomination have collectively cratered gold and silver prices from their highs, creating the buy-low window for institutional and government accumulation while retail is shaken out. The question is not if they want your gold. The question is when and how. So let me ask you one final question on this Valentine's Day. Is your wealth in your hands or in their system? If the banks close tomorrow, do you own it? Yes or a no? Leave your answer below. Because the 6102 playbook is open. The rhetoric is escalating. The debt is unsustainable. The digital corral is being built. And your physical metal is the only thing standing between you and total financial surveillance. Happy Valentine's Day to the Sound Money family. Love your family. Protect your wealth. Stack what you can afford. Hold what you have. They want you to trade your freedom for safety. They want you to trust the digital system. They want you back in dollars, back in treasuries, back in the corral. Don't give them what they want. This is John A.G. Live. We don't trade the price. We trade the liberty. Now you know.